It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Jack Phillips, and we're going to be talking about his brand new book. It's literally release day when we're recording this, and it's called The Cost of My Faith: How a Decision in My Cake Shop Took Me to the Supreme Court. Jack, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we don't want to leave you out. Jake, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the fine organization that you work for.
Sure. I'm Jake Warner. I'm legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. ADF is a large legal organization dedicated to advocating for religious freedom, the sanctity of life, free speech, parental rights, and marriage and family. And we represent people all over the country and even all over the world advocating these issues in courtrooms and legislatures and town halls all around the country.
Well, thank you for that introduction. We'll be sure to tell people where they can go to learn more and support your innovation, your organization at the close of the interview. I'm going to probably start off in a slightly different place than some of the people that have been interviewing you, Jack. I'd like to hear a bit of your origin story. So let's start off. Talk to us about art and baking. How did those two pursuits converge for you? You're pursuing two things that I don't always see come together.
Yeah, well, they came together pretty naturally for me. But going way back when I was a kid, I always loved to draw and paint and sculpt. And when I was in school, I was introduced to the concept of electives. And so rather than take the choir or anything like that, nobody would want me doing that. But I loved to take every class that I could down in the art rooms, and spent my time, all free time that I could down there. And then once I graduated, I needed a job, and a man that lived across the street from me owned a large wholesale bakery. This is a place with conveyor belts running all over, thousands of donuts and Danish every day. It was a factory, maybe 100 people, and I fell in love with baking, and I thought someday I'll open my own bakery. Nothing like this, but I'd like to open a bakery someday because I loved it. And then a couple of years down the road, the owner of the bakery bought out another bakery and brought in some cake decorators. And I had never seen that before. And suddenly I knew what a future bakery would look like for me. It would be a cake decorating place where I could use the cake as my canvas, and I could design custom cakes for people to help them celebrate. Because these people weren't just doing cakes like I was at the time. They were doing one cake at a time and one custom cake, and using techniques that I'd learned and that I could apply to that canvas as well as to a real canvas. So that took me to opening my own shop quite a few years later.
And your shop is called Masterpiece Cakeshop. Tell us a little bit about the significance of the name and really what was your goal? What did you want to set out to do in terms of serving your customers?
Well, as soon as I knew that I was going to open a shop specializing in custom cakes and creating those kind of cakes and messages for people, I also knew the name of the shop, and it was going to be Masterpiece Cake Shop. It's Masterpiece says art, and Cake Shop says cakes. I designed a logo that has a paint palette with a paintbrush and a French whisk through it to tie the art and the baking together. But also for me, there's a unique significance also in masterpiece. The word master appears in as half of the word masterpiece. And it reminds me of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he said that no man can serve two masters. And so every time I write out to this day masterpiece, it serves to remind me that Jesus is the master that I want to serve. And who am I going to serve today?
And I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey of faith. Did you grow up in a Christian home? Like, what was your faith formation like in some of your early years?
Yeah, as a family, we went to church pretty much every Sunday growing up. But, if you ask me then, I could have probably told you that Jesus and David and Goliath and Abraham, Moses all lived in the same town, just different sides. And I never got a good picture of what all that looked like. And then when I was about 17, I quit going to church and went to work. And, my work in the bakery involved working Sundays all the time. So even if I wanted to go back to church, which at that point I didn't, I couldn't because my schedule would not allow that.
And I really enjoyed the portion or part in the book where you talk about having what we might call a God encounter in
Right.
your car. Tell us a little bit of that story and what shifted for you in that moment. It sounds like it was a real foundational, formational experience for you?
Everything shifted that day. And I try and, tell the story in chapter 7 of The Cost of My Faith. It was, for me, the most important chapter to write because that was the day that I was driving home from work. I had a night shift, excuse me, worked a night shift. And so it was a bright, sunny morning in the spring here in Colorado and Denver. And I was headed home and, just doing my job. I was married, had 2 kids, taking care of the family, and, not like a drug addict or an alcoholic who woke up in the gutter in the rain and said, God, if you'll save me, I'll serve you. But I was just driving, going home, take care of things. And suddenly the Holy Spirit appeared in my car and convicted me of my sin. And I say, convicted me of my sin, as in sin nature, not my sins, the things that I had done. Because if I lie to you, that would be between you and I. But I would lie because I'm already a liar. That lying doesn't make me a liar. I lie because I am one. Or if I steal something, it's because I'm a thief. That doesn't make me a thief. And if I sin, that's because I'm already a sinner, and no sinner can live in God's presence. And I realized all of a sudden the Holy Spirit made it clear to me all those lessons that I heard in Sunday school made sense that I needed a Savior, that Jesus came to earth and he died on the cross and he was buried and he rose again the third day in order to pay the penalty for my sins. And I understood all those lessons all at once. And I understood that I was a sinner. I needed a Savior. It had to be Jesus. And as I was in my car, my first thought was to negotiate with him. And I thought, okay, let me clean up my life, kick this can down the road a little bit, let me clean up my life and you'll get a better deal. And he said, you can't. And I realized, you're right. I can't. I'm yours. And I was saved in that instant. My life radically changed from that moment to this. And then I also go on in The Cost of My Faith to tell how I had to go home then and approach my wife and tell her this change that had just taken place. And I didn't feel that that would probably go very well because just a few weeks earlier, my sister-in-law had merely invited her to go to church and she blew up at her, all these Christian hypocrites and all this stuff. So I wasn't looking forward to telling her that I became one of those Christians. And so working nights, slept during the day. So I would go home, greet her, head off to bed. And I'm one of the people who my head hits the pillow, I close my eyes, and I'm out instantly. But not this day. So the Lord kept telling me, go tell Debbie what you've just done. And that's not a good idea. I don't want to fight right now. I just soon go to sleep and tell her after I wake up, let me think about how to do this, and she'll probably take it better. Go tell her now. I really don't want to do that. Go tell her now. I'll be with you. So I relented. I tried. My second negotiation failed also. And so I got up and told my wife that I just become a Christian and waited for whatever response there would be. The response stunned me. She said, me too, 3 days ago. Like, now we have something in common. And that moment changed my life, changed our marriage, changed the way we raised our kids, our money, our finances, my dreams of the cake shop. I knew that it would be a place where I would strive to honor God.
Well, let's fast forward from that point, and whether we want to say to that fateful day, that providential day, we could put a lot of labels on that. In the book, you talk about 20 seconds, one decision, 19 words. That really, I feel like, illustrates how much
Yeah,
our lives can change in a mere moment. Um, Tell us about, was that just a normal day in the life running the cake shop? What happened on that day?
it was. It was just a normal day. It was a beautiful July afternoon when the 2 men came in. I went out front to greet them. I had 2 girls working for me. They were both involved with other projects, so it fell to me to take the next phone call or wait on the next customer or whatever. So it fell to me to go over and sit at the wedding desk and talk to these 2 men. And like I say, after our introductions, conversation is about 20 seconds long, just those few words. And the few words were, sorry guys, I don't make cakes for same-sex weddings. And I tried to, I hoped for a conversation where I could explain that. It was because of my faith that they were welcome in my shop, that I would serve them other cakes, anything else, do other custom work for them, sell them cookies or brownies out of my showcase. It wasn't them or their orientation. It was the message of a wedding cake. So it's a cake that I couldn't express the message, and I'm going to try and get to that with these 2 men, but I didn't have time because 20 seconds later, sorry guys, I don't create cakes for same-sex weddings. they jumped up. One of them jumps up, flipping me off, swearing at me, and storming out of the shop. And the other one gathered up his folder that he had, and his mom was sitting at one of our tables. I didn't notice her. They went out the other door, and I was stunned. It was just, I could understand that they would be disappointed that I couldn't create this cake for them, but at least to have a conversation and explain it, maybe we could, work out not a wedding cake, but work out that they were welcome in my shop. It just didn't happen.
And in terms of running your business, was this the first time you'd turned somebody away or turned somebody down, or was that just a normal process of living out your belief in your faith in the
Yeah.
process of running your business?
Well, before we opened the shop, we opened way back in 1993. But in the years preceding that, where I knew I was going to open a cake shop, and Debbie and I would sit and talk about what this shop would look like, um, different things that we could and couldn't create. And we decided a list of cakes that we couldn't create, and among them would be cakes that celebrated Halloween, which surprises many people, but also cakes that would be un-American or racist, or cakes that would insult or denigrate other people, including people who identify as LGBT. And even way back then, we knew that we wouldn't create cakes to celebrate same-sex weddings, even though that was not on the radar. Nobody was talking about it like they are now. It wasn't the law of the land. In fact, it was illegal in Colorado at that time. No government official could endorse the wedding from their office officially, but I was now going to be forced to create a cake to celebrate that. Yeah, there were a number of cakes that we decided that we couldn't create.
And reading through the part of the book where you talk about the backlash, the response that you received immediately, reminded me a lot of what Kentucky clerk Kim Davis went through. And I'd interviewed her a number of years back. Talk to us about the immediate response. What were the sorts of things that were happening? Phone calls, emails, just a lot of pushback.
Yeah, immediately after the two men left, like 20 minutes later, I get a phone call, and a hateful phone call. Are you the man who just turned away a gay couple? It's like, what in the world are you talking about? I would never turn away anybody, but I can't create every cake that people ask me to create, because the message and wedding cake for a same-sex wedding expresses a direct message that I can't do. But I, didn't get to explain all that, and the man swore at me and hung up on me. I'm like, wow, that was crazy. And then it happened again and again and again. Before I left that night, within an hour, I had like 6 phone calls that way. And I was stunned. It was just such a crazy situation. And I left that afternoon, and I stopped at the grocery store on the way home thinking, everybody here knows what just happened. Everybody's going to call me. Everybody hates me. This is what's going on. And the Lord brought a verse to my mind that Paul wrote to Timothy. He said, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I wasn't fearful. I was just wondering what's going on. But the sound mind part struck home, that God is in control of all this. He knows every phone call I'm going to get. He absolutely rules the universe. And I knew I could put this in his hands, and rest assured that whatever happened would be with his permission. So we got crazy phone calls like that all the next day Friday, the next day Saturday, probably Sunday as well, but I wasn't here. We're closed on Sundays. Monday I walk in, the phone was already ringing. It was the same thing for days and days.
And as awareness, momentum, steam, whatever you want to say, started to build in the culture around this, was everybody that you encountered angry and aggressive towards you, or were there some people that were actually open to at least dialoguing or hearing your side of the story?
For the first few days, everything was hateful. But then one phone call I got on that following Monday, just a couple days later, was from a man at Focus on the Family, and they had a news program then called Family News in Focus. Said he'd heard about my story over the weekend. Would I be interested in doing an interview? So he came up on Tuesday, and we did the interview, and it aired on Wednesday. And then things got really crazy, but I had so many phone calls that were positive then. But prior to that release on that Wednesday, none that were positive. But I also like to point out, during that interview, when he finished his interview that Tuesday, he said there are organizations that can help in a situation like this. Well, that's good news. And they can do it for free. That's even better. And I can connect you with one. So we'll call him up. So he called his contact at Alliance Defending Freedom. We talked about the case, what happened with the two men. You're not prejudiced because they're gay. No, absolutely not. I just can't create this cake to celebrate this cake, to express this message. Okay, if you hear anything from the state, call us. Don't reply. So I was had connections with Alliance Defending Freedom right from the start.
And how do we move from this time where there's pushback, there's a lot of emotion, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in court proceedings? How do we get from A to B?
Well, the two men went to the Colorado Civil Rights Division and filed a complaint that ended up going to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which there's a technicality there, but the commission set up a time for a hearing at an administrative law court, and the commission and the court, Yale Administrative Law Court, are both part of the executive branch. The government appoints the commissioners, and he appoints the judges to rule in these things. So our governor then was John Hickenlooper, and a fairly liberal governor, and so I could imagine going into it that the court would rule against us, which they did. And so the next step was to appeal to the Colorado Court of Appeals, which is now in the judicial system and out of the executive branch. And graduating high school, I could have told you there were three branches of government, maybe told you what they were. Now I have a much better understanding of who they are and what they do. So now we're in the court system, and we argued at the Court of Appeals, and we lost there 3-0. The three judges sitting on the panel. And then we appealed to the Colorado State Supreme Court, and they denied our case. So basically, we're done. The only other option is to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. So as we were discussing that, deciding that, I learned that the United States Supreme Court gets requests for about 8,000, 10,000 cases every year, and they can only take about 70 of them. And for them to take my case would be highly unusual. They turn away 99% of the cases, more than that. And so while those discussions were going on, I said, they're already not hearing our case. Let's go ahead and file the petition. The worst that could happen is we're officially not heard. They deny it. And the attorneys made me realize that and said, no, the worst that could happen is that they grant your case and you lose. And at that moment, I think it hit me most profoundly that this was not about me making cakes again. This was about the rights of every American to live and work according to their conscience freely without fear of punishment from the government. And it suddenly got so much larger because it affects everybody in this country.
And early on in the journey, did you have any inkling or any sense that this would go all the way to the Supreme Court, or was that even a surprise to you as things progressed along the journey?
It was a while before we even considered going to the Supreme Court. I thought we'd go to the state Supreme Court and jump from there. But then when the state denied our case, like the chances of getting to the U.S. Supreme Court are just so slim. But then when they granted it, it was a crazy day in the shop because I was watching a website called SCOTUS blog. SCOTUS is Supreme Court of the U.S., and it's a website that monitors the court and reports on things. And every Monday they tell you what happened that previous week. And that Monday morning, I was watching on my computer, and I see these 5 words appear on this blog text. Masterpiece Cakeshop has been granted after being relisted a record number of times. They were talking about my case all year. Finally, we have the decision, and I get to go to the Supreme Court. So that very day, I've got newspapers and radio and all these people, friends and family. It was just a crazy day at the shop. But in the middle of that day, we get a phone call from an attorney here in Colorado, and the attorney requested another custom cake. And this cake would be blue on the outside and pink on the inside. And those colors were to celebrate a gender transition, a changing from man to woman. And so we told this attorney, we can't create that cake because the message it expresses, but we'll gladly sell you other custom cakes or anything in our shop. But that wasn't good enough for this attorney. And so while we're still going through the court, this attorney filed a complaint with the same Civil Rights Commission. And then in June of 2018, we get our 7-2 victory from the United States Supreme Court, celebrating that for 3 weeks. And the commission comes back and says, we have probable cause to pursue this next complaint.
So you have one victory in the first case, and maybe Jake wants to weigh in on this. Like, man, how do you even start moving forward when you it was moving in a direction like, oh man, this finally is going to wrap up, and it almost feels like you're going back to the drawing board, and starting all over again.
Sure. Jack's victory at the U.S. Supreme Court was big back in June 2018. And, for context, that decision rested on 2 key principles. You might remember that during Jack's first case, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission compared Jack's plea for religious freedom to defenses that justified slavery and the Holocaust, some of the worst things in history. That was one reason that the US Supreme Court found that the state was acting with hostility against Jack and his faith. But there was another reason too. During Jack's first case, three other cake artists declined to create cakes for a Christian man that celebrated or expressed messages that went against their core beliefs. But instead of prosecuting them, just as they were doing against Jack, the state declined to prosecute them, saying that they had a right to decline to create those cakes because of their objection to the message that those cakes express. And the Supreme Court looked at that and said, look, you can't treat Jack and his faith worse than these other cake artists and their non-religious beliefs. That is a violation of the free exercise clause. So in Jack's first case, the free exercise violation was very clear, and the court didn't even need to reach the free speech question. But what we're seeing now is government officials overreaching and trying to really abuse the justice system to punish people that they disagree with. And then more recently, what we're seeing are activists doing the same thing, just like this attorney that requested a custom pink and blue cake to celebrate a gender transition. People are abusing the justice system just to punish people that they disagree with, and that's wrong.
And it's almost time for us to wrap up. I guess, Jack, my question to you would be in terms of the people who watch this interview, listen to the interview, how would you challenge them or encourage them to really think critically about this intersection of faith and culture? We're at a messy time, but a very important time right now. What do people need to be thinking about?
Well, we won the first case. We won the second case. It was dismissed, and we're currently in our third lawsuit where the same attorney is now suing us in the state court system. And in a face-to-face mediation with this attorney, I was told that if I won this case, if it was dismissed, that I would be called the next day with another cake and we'd start all over again. And so this attorney has me in the crosshairs, and so we know that this case won't end soon, but we also know that God is in control of everything. And there's a verse in Second Chronicles that says that the eyes of the Lord range throughout the whole earth to strengthen the man whose heart is fully committed to Him. And so I'd like to challenge everybody. That verse doesn't say He's looking for one man; He's looking for any man whose heart is fully committed to Him, and He will strengthen that man and show His strength through that man. And so we're relying on God. He's provided everything we've needed all our lives, including, Alliance Defending Freedom. My family has grown so much closer together because of our faith. And we know that we trust God to provide what we need going forward. And His decision will be the one that stands.
And Jake, for those who would like to support this particular case and support the work of ADF, where can we do that on the web?
You can go to www.adflegal.org, and we represent people just like Jack all over the country.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have links in the show notes, places where you can pick up your very own copy of the book. We're actually recording this on release day, so it's widely available wherever great books are sold. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Jack Phillips. Once again, our book today was The Cost of My Faith, How a Decision in My Cake Shop Took Me to the Supreme Court. For more on Jack's bakery, you can head on over to masterpiececakes.com, find out more about him there. And for more on ADF, head on over to their website, once again, at adflegal.org. Jack, Jake, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor to have you on the show. This is an important book. Thank you for promoting it.
Thanks, Sean. It's been
Thanks, John.